Hello everyone, as usual it's me Pavlo, and today we'll be talking about a fresh new product by a company famous for their unusual approaches to the portable audio. It's Cayin RU9 and it's their new portable DAC with Bluetooth connectivity. It's built with AK4493 chips and it uses MOSFETs for amplification and also utilizes Korg NuTubes. And as usual in this case from Cayin, you getting an ability to select between solid-state amplification and two types of tube amplification. On top of that, support of modern Bluetooth codecs, XMOS chips, so everything to make this device really interesting. Price is $500 and let's have a closer look. Package is pretty small, minimalistic with just black and gold embossing. Some specifications are printed on the back side and inside we're getting almost mandatory black main box made of nice cardboard with tight fitting lid, and underneath we're getting the device itself. And when we go deeper, we can see some papers probably here in this envelope. Yeah, basically it's just a manual. And you'll get nice leather case, also adapter ring because it supports MagSafe, or however that magnetic ring on the iPhone's call. And if you don't have this on your phone, you can actually glue this ring and use it both in case or without case. Also, you'll get a really nice angled USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable, and adapter from Type-C to Type-A. You can carry it with you as on your keychain if you choose to do so. As you can see, actually pretty good accessory set. Of course, in terms of size and weight, it definitely differs from the RU6 and RU7. And so, in my humble opinion, Cayin should put it into some separate line like RE, RA or something like that, and leave RU line for the battery-less dongles. But here we have a much bigger device with built-in battery, wider functionality, and much more things going on. If I'd try to name it properly, probably it would have been something like portable DAC with Bluetooth receiver functionality. Anyway, despite of larger size, it feels really well built, it's really pleasant to hold in hand, and it feels really solid on the back of the device. As I've mentioned before, it supports MagSafe, so you can attach it to smartphones that support it. Either iPhones or some modern smartphones. If you don't have MagSafe, you can either glue this ring and use it, or you can use some case with circular magnet. It's a pretty convenient thing to have. In terms of design, it reminds me old players made by Cayin, like N5, N6, i5, and I feel a bit nostalgic about that times, and I really like that Cayin decided to go a little back to that times. It's really well built, it's machined from aluminum and feels really solid. Nothing is shaking, nothing is rattling, so really well looking device. On the left side we have 3 buttons for playback control. On top we have a window. I suspect Bluetooth antenna is hidden underneath. On the right side we have on-off button, multicolor LED indicator, and the button for menu and switching between different audio modes. On the bottom we have SPDIF input and output, two USB inputs that became more and more traditional in modern devices. So You can connect it to your smartphone without draining smartphone's battery. It will use internal battery. Or you can connect it to the external power supply and activate DC mode. It will charge battery, but will get main power from the DC power brick, providing higher gain. And the two outputs, balanced and single-ended, both can be used as headphones or as a line out. On the back side, nothing but a nice texture and MagSafe ring. And on the front, some small openings so you can see tubes inside when they are turned on, and screen and volume regulator. It has nice well-defined clicks and it's pretty convenient in handling. So, as you can see, screen is pretty small, not super bright, but here use some nice LED and actually information remains pretty readable. Volume, selected gain, selected mode, battery indicator, signal resolution, and selected input mode. You can toggle between 3 sound modes with this button, and it's solid state, tube classical, and tube modern. I will explain about this a bit more later. In terms of battery lifetime, you'll get from 3 to 5 hours depending on the output selected, gain and mode. It's not much definitely, but taking into account a pretty serious DAC and tube mode, it's probably normal figures. And there is a menu. If you press and hold this button, as your fonts are tiny, so you need to have a good eyesight. You can select source, USB, Bluetooth or SPDIF, 3 levels of gain, line out. You can select between high, low and medium gain, separate gain for the line out mode. Output, headphones, line out or SPDIF, so you can use it as for example, USB to SPDIF converter if you need it. Then USB audio class, it's classical selection between higher resolution or better compatibility with older devices. Then USB input, you can select either it's audio only or audio and power. Idle shutdown timer, PCM and DSD filters, brightness, it's maximum level set now. Timer for display off and firmware version. So not much settings, but they are pretty convenient for fast toggle. No application support, but probably this device don't need it. And in terms of Bluetooth reception, it's average in terms of length, but when it's not far from the device, it's actually holding connection pretty well, even in places when there is a lot of interference. At least when I tested with my iPhone and with FiOS M21 as a transport. And of course, let's talk about the sound. As you can see, I connected to FiO M17 via Bluetooth. It's for demonstration purpose, but of course main testing I did in the USB connection. I tried also SPDIF connection. I can't hear big difference between USB and SPDIF. But I must admit that actually even in the wireless mode, sound performance is pretty good. Of course, you're losing a bit of extension on both ends, but not too much. So in modern devices, and RU9 is not an exception, Bluetooth with high-resolution codecs is a pretty viable option that gives you more freedom without big sacrifices in terms of sound. And as usual for many devices with tubes, you getting here 3 modes. They have slightly different names, but main idea behind them is pretty traditional, and Cayin were first or among the first who actually introduced these 3 modes. So solid state is most natural, most focused on the detailization, But still, here it's not some kind of monitoring or dry representation. It's still pretty musical, but compared to other modes, it's less colored. Then here it's called Tube Classic, but it's the most colored mode with warmer bass, more fluid mids, and more liquid and relaxed treble. And here it's modern tubes, it's mode with tubes coloration, but at the same time it's pretty technical, but with more focus on the emotions, on the macro dynamics, giving you more wow effect, but without softening sound too much. So let's talk about all this step by step. So bass is well controlled, it goes to the maximum depth. In solid state mode you'll get pretty good texturing with noticeable amount of small nuances. Instrument sounds rich and texturing is also pretty impressive. With Tube Classic mode you're getting softer, warmer, bigger body that reduces resolution and makes textures a bit softer, but sometimes it's really really complementing some tunes, especially some old ones, for example. And in Tube Modern mode, you're getting more snap, you're getting more focus on the punch, you're getting more dynamics and slightly less small nuances. So bass became more effective, slightly less natural probably compared to solid state mode, but more forward with more focus on the instruments, and it sounds really nice with some audiophilic recordings where you want to get that sense of instrument. And first example, it's Sonny Rollins St. Thomas. Great recording. Actually, it's pretty audiophilic one, and of course it sounds the most impressive in this modern tube mode with more focused dynamics of accompanying instruments and with low notes being slightly more highlighted. And one of my most favorite bands ever existed, Yello, track Do It, punchy, nice, engaging bass line, but at the same time not as oversaturated as some modern electronic music. And here I actually enjoyed both solid state and tube modern modes. With tube modern mode I got more wow effect from bass, but then I toggled to solid state mode and probably it's the most fitting here, at least to my taste. But of course, if you'll decide to get this device, you can freely experiment trying whichever mode you like more. They all are really interesting. On the mid frequencies in solid state mode, you're getting like traditional modern sound with good balance between detalization and dynamics, and at the same time musicality and emotions. Amount of details you're getting is really noticeable, and on the audiophilic records you'll get all that tiniest nuances, but at the same time they are not exaggerated, and RU9 doesn't sound natural or analytical or sterile. It gives you really good sense of realism and presence, and music is not being sliced into small tiny pieces. Imaginary stage is noticeably above average in width and in depth. Depth is slightly smaller than width, but still stage is pretty good with proper size of instruments and good positioning. In the classical tube mode, you're getting noticeably reduced amount of small nuances and more weight and more saturated emotions. So it's kind of warmish type of sounding. Stage became smaller in both dimensions, but at the same time you're getting more coherent and wholesome representation, especially on the old type of records. And this tube modern mode, boosting emotions, boosting dynamics, you also getting a bit of additional warmth, but much less compared to classical tube mode. And you're getting higher resolution, but at the same time, focus shifted from the micro to the macro. You're getting more highlighted transitions. You're getting more highlighted instruments, and with many tunes, it sounds epic. It reduces width of the stage, but at the same time, depth remains pretty noticeable with good layer separation and with effect of forwardness for the vocal and sometimes for some instruments. And let's go to the examples. First one is Mammagamma by Alan Parsons project, and actually this one I liked in the classical tube mode. It's not the track that is focused on some rich nuances, and a bit of additional warmth in classical tube mode, making it sound a bit more vintage and, probably a bit more time appropriate. Or maybe it's some kind of placebo effect for me. And Undercover by Royal Republic. I really like Royal Republic because it's a band that always improves my mood. They have fun and sometimes silly texts. They have nice and catchy tunes. They have great grooves. So I highly recommend this band to you if you like not so heavy rock and enjoy a bit of fun. And this track is sounding really great in solid state mode, but in the modern tube mode, it became even funnier because vocal is slightly more forward and the guitars are more highlighted, and it gives a more engaging representation. If you've seen some of my previous reviews, you know that I'm a fan of treble and overall high frequencies, and that's why RU9 surprised me most of all, because Cayin managed to do an interesting trick. While three different modes change high frequencies representation in a noticeable way, in all three modes, treble extension remains exceptionally well. It's almost maximum, and it's well controlled all over all three modes. But at the same time, you're getting pretty different representation, and solid state also being a baseline here. It has a really proper attacks and decays, nice control all over all frequencies. It's not overly accented. It doesn't have excessive amount of energy put into high frequencies to give you that effect of airness or something like that. It has pretty good for this price layering, and that gives you nice amount of information about the audience where track was recorded, if its information is preserved during mastering and mixing. And you're getting really rich, saturated high frequencies, but they are not sharp. Or actually, they are not sharp if they are not sharp in the record. And if you don't like high frequencies, you can use this classical tube modes. You're getting almost the same amount of highs, but at the same time they are more liquid, they are more smooth, but with still with a good amount of nuances and details. It's like a bit less energy put into this region, but at the same time you're getting nice clarity. It's not that effect when high frequencies are just reduced and you starting losing that sense of air and overtones. No, it's just a bit smoother transitions that sounds more pleasant and comfortable, and a lot of modern music actually sounds better in this mode on the high frequencies because they have issues with treble mastering, and that allows to hide that. And that modern tube mode, it's interesting because it goes somewhere in between. You're getting a bit faster attacks and decays on the higher frequencies, and they became a bit more saturated but not sharp. Even when there are some issues in the high frequencies, in the modern tube mode you're getting a bit more energy and clarity, but at the same time not sharpness. Even with poorly recorded tracks, both tube modes will give you a pretty decent high frequency performance. And first example is Burdened by Opeth, probably the best ballad in terms of performance in the history of metal, or one of the best. Of course, it's a subjective thing, but I like how uncompromised well it's performed and recorded, that well-controlled emotions in the vocal and in the instruments, and that amount of high frequencies that it delivers. And probably I like it most of all in modern tube modes. But of course, solid state is also good here. And Sting, Consider Me Gone, actually also a great choice for modern tube mode, because there are a lot of high frequencies and I like how they are recorded. Sting always paid a lot of attention to the accompanying music. He always hired great musicians, and his works are well recorded, mixed and mastered, and it's a sheer joy to hear all that percussions, bells, and all that tiny stuff that is present in this record, in actually in every three modes, but my choice is also modern tube one. Another pleasantly surprising aspect of RU9 is its versatility in terms of pairings. Cayin engineers spend a lot of time thinking about mechanical damping of these NuTubes and their insulation from EMI and interference. And as a result, even with sensitive IEMs, you getting great black background. Maybe not the greatest, but a really good one, especially if you'll try to keep the gain as low as possible. Even when it's attached to the back side of the device, even with Bluetooth connection, I've got almost no interference. Probably it depends on many factors, like what Wi-Fi router you are using, what your phone is, but in my case I've got no interference. And with full-size headphones it provides plenty of power even when running from the battery. For example, to drive my Mesa Empyrean 2 to a really good level of dynamics and nice stage. Not the best one, but pretty good. But if you need even more driving power, you can engage this DC mode and get even more impressive results. In terms of comparisons, the only device that makes sense comparing it with probably it's that Muse Hi-Fi M5 Ultra that I reviewed recently. And while they have some similarities, like these modes with same ideas, RU9 does everything slightly better. In the solid state mode, it will provide you more balanced and more musical sound with slightly less focus on the small nuances, but overall sounding more natural. And tube classic mode will be warmer than corresponding mode of M5 Ultra, and tube modern will be a bit more detailed and technical. But at the same time, of course, it's slightly more expensive. Unfortunately, I didn't test Cayin's N3 Ultra, which also has tubes and 3 modes, so can't compare here. And probably it doesn't make sense in doing comparisons with things like FiOS Q15. And compared to RU6 and RU7, here we're getting more dynamics, we're getting more resolution, because here it's modern Delta Sigma DAC with tube amplification, so it's a different concept of sound. So, if you're looking for a great performing portable DAC, and if you are a fan of things like tubes in the portable mode, it's a really great option in terms of price to quality ratio. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and have a great day.